morning and welcome to Sunday School at Second Baptist Church. We're working through the book of Proverbs, and this week we are in chapter 4 of Proverbs. The title of our lesson today is Choices. And in the first 3 chapters of Proverbs, Solomon, or King Solomon, has been talking about the value of wisdom, God's wisdom, godly wisdom, and how valuable it is, and how we should seek after it, and other admonishments about wisdom. And then we get to chapter 4, and in the beginning of that chapter, he again, is encouraging his son, and he says my son, and we can take that as his actual son, or that he may, be speaking to all people. When he says, get wisdom and gain understanding, and how important it is. So he again is reminding that, and he says, to wisdom add understanding. And I thought about that because I would have probably said wisdom is understanding. But, you can even have wisdom about something, but understanding may take it just a little bit further, where you say, okay, I have the wisdom about that, and also I have the deeper understanding to know how to use it in the right way. And so he says to, get the wisdom and then add to it understanding. And that you'll be blessed by doing so. So our text for today starts in verse 11. And so we're at Proverbs chapter 4, verse 11, and let's read 11 to 13. It says, I have directed you in the way of wisdom. I have led you in upright paths. When you walk, your steps will not be impeded, and if you run, you will not stumble. Take hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her, for she is your life. This first part, I really like it, because what he's encouraging here is, he's saying, take instruction. Be willing to receive instruction. If you feel that you know everything you need to know, then you have cut off any future instruction that you might gain. And we can all learn something. Every one of us, no matter how many years we have, we can always learn something new. He talks about God's wisdom will guide us on straight paths. Or it says in my Bible, it calls it upright paths, but straight paths. In other words, the way of God is the right way. There is a right way to follow and a right path to follow. And so God's wisdom is going to guide us down that path. And it says when you walk, your steps are not going to be impeded, or if you run, you're not going to stumble. As we follow the path of life, the godly instruction or godly wisdom can keep us from being tripped up by the circumstances that we come across, if we can think of it in that way, that at any moment we might run against something that, if we're not careful, it can trip us up. It can lead us astray. It can cause us to be diverted from the path that God has for us. And so that godly wisdom helps us to see the path and stay on the path that He's showing us. And then in verse 13 it says, take hold of instruction. So it's almost like grab hold of it. When you receive instruction from God, grab hold of it and don't let it go. And it says don't let go of the instruction. Guard it, for she is your life, my version says. So the idea of tightly gripping God's wisdom and instruction that you receive and following it intently. You can have godly wisdom and you might put it in your back pocket and say, well, if all else fails, I'll pull that out and use it. And I think sometimes we do that. But this verse is telling us to guard that instruction that we receive. And it says, for it is your life. That's pretty important. If it is your life, in other words, it makes the difference, maybe in life or death, maybe in quality of life, where you have a peace-filled life versus a tumultuous life. So many options there, and there are many choices that we make in our life as we go along. So that first part is talking about, grabbing hold of the wisdom and instruction that we receive. And then in verse 14, it begins to talk about a contrast, which is the path of the wicked. And let's see what it says in chapter 4, verse 14 to 19 is what I'm going to read right now. Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not proceed in the way of evil men. Avoid it. Do not pass by it. Turn away from it and pass on. For they cannot sleep unless they do evil, and they are robbed of sleep unless they make someone stumble. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn that shines brighter and brighter until the full day. The way of the wicked is like darkness. They do not know over what they stumble. So that first part in verse 14 and 15, he's given some very strong commands there. 6 commands, if you count them up, to keep away from the way of the wicked, the path of the wicked. It says don't pass by it, don't look down it, avoid going there, turn the other way. And I added some more to that. Don't stand gazing or envying, because it came to my mind that we might be wise enough or smart enough to say, oh no, I'm not going down that path. But what about gazing and standing and looking at it and studying on it and thinking about it? Even that amount of consideration of the path of the wicked is putting something into our heads. It's feeding into our mind, and that's the way the devil will gradually wear you down. Where right at first you might say, no way am I going in that direction. But then, well, that guy's doing it, and those people are doing it, and it doesn't seem to matter, and nobody cares, and all of a sudden you find that maybe you're still not going that way, but you're not opposed to it anymore. And then gradually, that's the way the devil works. He's not going to make it so obvious that you just, you're alerted. He's going to gradually slip it in on you. And so, I think about it. When I thought about this, I thought about the idea of going to the mall. And when I was younger, when we were first married, we were in seminary, we were poor. I mean, we just didn't have anything. And I can't say that we have all that much now either. But we would go, if we ever had a chance to go out and do anything, we would go to the mall and look around. And after a while, I realized that going to the mall and looking around all that did was hurt my feelings, because it just pointed out to me all of the things that I didn't have, that I couldn't buy, and that, it made me want those things. It made me feel sad or feel envious of other people. And I realized that's not a good place for me to go. Why would I want to go there and look at all those things when I have no intention or ability to buy those things? It just makes me feel bad every time. And once I realized that, I could turn away from that and do other things for fun. But, growing up, when you're a teenager, you think going to the mall, that's just the greatest thing ever, But I tried to rethink my reason for being there, and the fact that it really wasn't fun. I might call it fun, but it really wasn't fun. And I think, examining the things that you choose to do, and even if that's the thing that everybody does, maybe it's not the thing that you need to do. Maybe it is actually causing you pain or causing you to go in a direction that you should not be going. And there are a lot of other examples that are worse than going to the mall. The idea of going to a drinking establishment, let's say, where you at one time you might feel that, no, that is absolutely not for me, it's not the lifestyle that I want. But then if you get 2 or 3 friends that are regularly going to those kinds of places, it's an influence, and it causes you to begin to consider, okay, maybe I do, maybe it would be all right if I just do that. I'm not going to go this far with it, And gradually, the devil can get hold of you in your life and cause you to do things that embarrass God and hurt your Christian testimony. And it's not, not only that example. It says here that the wicked, this is in verse 16 now. Well, let me go back. I'm jumping ahead of myself now. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 and 14, I want to read those verses. This is a quote that Jesus, some verses that quote the sayings of Jesus or what Jesus said. Matthew 7, 13 and 14, Jesus said, "Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it." And we have heard that verse many times in church about how the way to destruction is broad, meaning that it's a wide and easy road, and there are a lot of people on it that are just going along with the crowd and going towards destruction. But then the way that Jesus wants us to follow is narrow, the gate is small, and we have to find that path and get on it. So it says in verses 16 and 17 that we just read of Proverbs chapter 4, it says that the wicked, talking about the wicked, they cannot sleep until they do evil, and they are robbed of sleep unless they make someone stumble. And this is so true, that when a person has chosen to do wrong, whatever it is, it's not going to be enough that they have made that choice and that they are doing that thing. Eventually, maybe not right at first, but eventually, they're going to turn and they're going to actively recruit others to do that wicked thing that they are doing. That happens time and time over again. You see it, where it's not enough for them to have made that wicked choice. I think in a way they're trying to make themselves feel better. They're trying to silence the voice of God that's saying to them, you've made a wicked choice, by surrounding themselves with friends who are going to also make that choice, because that can make them feel better about the choice they've made, and they get that temporary reprieve from the guilt of it, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes people are not even guilty about it. Solomon went on to say that these people, they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. So what he's saying is that their food is wickedness. This is the thing that feeds them. This is how they get their nourishment, is by doing wicked things. And their drink, the thing that sustains your body, is violence. And so he's making it a very clear warning to his sons and all of us to avoid the path of the wicked, because it only leads you further and further down. And I mean further and further down in a bad direction, where you say someone is on a downward spiral. They've started doing the wrong thing and they are continuing. They might not be going down real fast, but they're gradually getting worse and worse, and you see it happen sometimes. Okay, and then we get to verse 18 and 19, where he talks again about the path of the righteous, that it is like the light of dawn that shines brighter and brighter until the full day. And I like that verse because I thought about it in this way. When you get on the path that God wants you to be on, that he has set out for you, and you get on that path, you might start on the path just like the dawn is talking about. The dawn, it starts to be a little bit light, and then it gradually gets lighter and lighter. The only time I ever see the dawn is when we camp out, because usually I'm so uncomfortable that as soon as the first bird chirps, I wake up, and then I'm awake, before it gets light. And then you see that gradually it starts to be a little bit light, and then there's quite a period of time before the sun actually comes up, that it's just getting brighter and brighter. And being on Solomon is comparing this to the path of the righteous. And I think of it in that way, that you're on this path, maybe right at first when you get on it, it's still dark and you don't really understand what you're headed towards. But as you go, it becomes more clear that God is leading you, and more clear until ultimately you meet God face to face when you leave this world and enter the next. And so, if you're a young Christian or a new Christian and you've just gotten on that path, it may still seem very confusing. But as you travel along, as you go along, it becomes more and more bright and more clear that God is leading you, is showing you what to do, is helping you in the problems that you encounter so that you don't stumble and fall. And then at the end of this, he goes one more time back to the contrast of the way or the path of the wicked. The way of the wicked is like darkness. They do not know what they stumble over. And if you don't, if you need a refresher on what that's like, get all the lights off, even in a house that you're familiar with, so that you can't see anything. Let's say the power goes off, so that there is no light at all. And all of a sudden, the things that you knew right where they were because you could see them, all of a sudden, you're not sure how far away they are. You're not sure if you're on, quite reached the place where you're past that chair, and you could easily stumble over it. And he compares the path of the wicked to this idea that they are just stumbling in the darkness through life. They stumble from one thing, they may get up and stumble over the next thing. And they really don't know. They don't have a guide. They don't have a light for their path. They don't have a way to see the way forward. They're just stumbling from one thing to another to another. And we can see that many times. Now, let's finish out the last few verses that it gives us, starting in verse 20 and go to 27. So it goes to the end of the chapter. My son, give attention to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them depart from your sight. Keep them in the midst of your heart. For they are life to those who find them, and health to all their body. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. Put away from you a deceitful mouth, and put devious speech far from you. Let your eyes look directly ahead, and let your gaze be fixed straight in front of you. Watch the path of your feet, and all your ways will be established. Do not turn to the right nor to the left. Turn your foot from evil. Now, he was repetitive in a lot of this, and just urging and encouraging his sons to stay on the path once you find it. And in verse 23, I'm going to read that from the Sunday school book, because that's a verse that gets quoted, and my version says it in a little bit different way. It says, watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. But in the Sunday school book, it says, guard your heart above all else, for it is the source of life. So again, it's talking about guarding your heart. If you don't do anything else, guard your heart. And there are a lot of Bible studies that are done for young people in particular about guarding your heart as you look for your spouse and as you go out into the world and you're influenced by the world. Guarding your heart to be sure that you don't even begin to look down the path of the wicked. And then it says, keep devious talk out of your mouth. Devious or deceitful. And to me, this is any kind of thing you might say that would be misleading, that would be tricking another person, or not quite truthful. But, sometimes people say things that are not quite a lie, or they don't think they are, but they're not really truthful either. And that's a temptation, for everybody, to not be truthful. And so it warns us here to keep any misleading or devious thoughts from your mouth. Words from your mouth. And then there's a verse that talking about the path of wisdom in Hebrews chapter. Well, in these verses that I just read, it talks about letting your gaze be fixed straight ahead. Don't look one way or the other. Look straight ahead. And then in Hebrews chapter 12, in verses 1 and 2, it says, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So the writer of Hebrews is also reflecting these words when he says, fix your eyes and run the race, and get rid of those things that might entangle you or trip you up. So I think the title of our lesson, Choices, is a good title for this lesson, because we see that throughout life we're traveling down a path, and we have choices every day as to whether we leave the path that God has chosen for us and go chase a rabbit, or go off in a direction that's not good, or if we focus our lives and have a direct a direct vision, a vision for the path that God is leading us down. This is very important for all of us. And, we refresh our vision every day and in every way as we read God's Word and talk with other Christians who give us encouragement as we pray and we listen to God's Holy Spirit speaking to our hearts and helping us to know that we are on the path that He has wanted us to go down. I appreciate you joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week as we continue our study through the Proverbs. Have a great week.